Good evening, everyone. I am Shujin Tribal Kawanishi here in Second Life. Welcome to the podcast When I Was Your Age. Podcast where I will be talking about stuff from, give or take, when I was your age, from the 70s through the early 90s, telling you about what common stuff today was like when I was your age. If you've got suggestions that you would like us to tackle over here, please, by all means, email address is right over here. You can go ahead and email me over at shujintribble@gmail.com. Be more than happy to take care of that for you. Tonight is a little bit weird because I'm going to be talking this night about a person and a style, so to speak, that really wasn't inexistent when I was a kid, because it's what I'm doing tonight's show. My primary show tonight is covering over Jack Benny's radio show, so it's old-time radio. And on the line with me right now is the guy who actually sings the opening and closing song here, who has graciously given me the opportunity to use it. Ladies and gentlemen, George Hrab is on with me tonight. Hello, George.
Hi. How's it going?
Doing okay. Good to have you back. I'm glad
nice to be back.
I'm glad I didn't completely scare you off the last time.
No, please, my goodness, it was fun. Nice to be back.
All right. So, what I wanted to talk with you about, because when we were talking last, the conversation that lasted a long time, you talked about how you recognized Jack Benny from how I was describing it. Plus, you know a lot more about his successor, as you basically put it, Stan Freberg. And these guys basically came through roughly the same time frame. And you have an appreciation of, so I figured you'd be a perfect opportunity for this kind of thing on like 3 different levels. Not to mention, I mean, just the idea of having you come on and you were singing, and then you'll be singing after is all kinds of meta, and something about that was just tickling me pink.
Love it. Well, let me explain to your listeners that this is not quite my age.
Or
just
mine.
Hope that's clear.
Right, not mine either.
I was not listening to Jack Benny or Stan Freberg when it was first run on CBS radio by any chance.
No, nor I.
All right.
Yes. we learned about it afterwards, and my route to it was Saturday afternoon TV or Sunday afternoon TV, depending as to when it was. You might remember at New York City, WPIX, Channel 11.
Sure.
Okay. I forget if it was Saturday or Sunday afternoons. They would always have the old black and white comedies of Abbott and Costello.
Right.
So from that, I listened to tapes of that, and then it became George and Gracie when I picked those up, and then I learned about Jack through all of that. How did you pick up Stan Freberg?
Yeah, it's funny. I have to just say that a distinct early memory of laughing, quite possibly the hardest I've ever laughed, was watching one of those PIX afternoon Abbott and Costello shows. I'm not sure which film this is. It might be when they come back from World War II, but there's a racing sequence that's this crazy car chase race where poor Lou ends up in a pile of tires at a gas station and just pops his head out and says, "Boy, am I tired." And to like the little 8-year-old me, this was the funniest, most clever. I remember just crying that you could laugh that hard at something that was, created somewhere in a different age, But anyway, yeah, Freberg I came across in a similar way. I think that might have primed my appreciation for black and white comedy, stuff from the 40s. But my high school band director hipped me to Stan Freberg because he knew I had an appreciation somehow for that kind of 40s music, big band music.
Yep.
Being a drummer, learning how to play drums, Buddy Rich is a default influence. It's like if you're going to learn magic, you learn about Houdini.
Yes. If
you're going to play drums, you learn about Buddy Rich. It's just sort of the way it goes. And Buddy Rich and all of his big band playing, and so I got into big band playing, of course. And my band director knew that I was kind of dug the funny stuff, and said, here's a good combination. And he would play things for me from Stan Freberg. I guess his teachers played it for him too, because that wasn't his age either. But and I fell in love with this album called The United States of America. Volume 1, the early years, and it's just a history of the continent, the American continent, up until the Revolutionary War. and it's just some of the funniest, most brilliant stuff, and not just funny and written really well, but performed really well. And the music on all of Stan's stuff is so incredible. And I think that's the connection with Jack Benny that there might be, is that Jack Benny had his CBS radio program, and then he left that to go do his TV show. And the person that took his CBS radio slot was Stan Freberg. And this was a time when you had incredible bands on the radio and on TV, actual human beings sitting, playing this stuff day after day, week after week, doing full, massive arrangements, on the fly arrangements, stuff being written for him. Stan's band director was Billy May, who did all of his arrangements as well. Billy May also was famous for writing Frank Sinatra's earlier arrangements before Nelson Riddle came in. Billy May was the arranger, and to me, Billy's arranging is the absolute. Enough, they were on Columbia, but it's the best kind of arrangements for what a post 1940s big band can be. So I just fell in love with it. It's just loud, it's brashy, it's awesome, it swings like a mother. And then you top it all off with Stan being just hilarious and having a very hip, very ahead of the curve kind of sense of humor.
Yeah. Now that's one of the things that I wanted to specifically hit. I wanted to hit as consumers of the comedy, as it were, in our particular case, as being the outsiders enjoying it all. The thing that I love about Jack's stuff, especially till today, and a lot of the stuff, and like you said, the black and white era, and in this case, we're not talking about racism, people. Please don't even bother going there. We're talking about the time before there was... Okay, if you ask your parents or maybe even your grandparents, you might find out, until about 1965 or so, the universe was all black and white. There was no color, there was no green, red, primary colors, nothing like that. I mean, all that stuff on the painting on the walls, that's all faux coloring. That was done by Ted Turner. The era of this stuff was, in some ways, so innocent and still brash in its own way, and even till today, there's some stuff comedically that admittedly is kind of corny by our sensibilities now, but still so much of it is just fun. Even if we don't necessarily recognize all of the topical content or the people that they might be referencing to. That can't be the easiest kind of comedy in the world to write, but for us to enjoy it as just people, this is... I don't know of anybody in I don't know, the last 20 years, to sound stupid, where it's been you could actually listen to again and again afterwards and still enjoy it as much. Now, obviously there's some people who you can. For instance, there are some people who absolutely swear by, among other things, among other people, Richard Pryor. Because he was engaging to you. People used to say that you went to see Richard Pryor, he didn't talk at you, he talked with you.
Right.
You just couldn't talk back to him because, 14,000 people, what can you do? But
I think it's curious you're bringing up the innocence thing, because there is a very weird dichotomy with this 50s sort of humor. The early TV. The innocence is there because there's a certain standard that you had to maintain in terms of language and topic.
Yes.
And yet, an entire generation had just Europe, where they literally saw their friends, heads blown off, where they were waist deep in
people,
human misery.
Yeah.
Absolute misery, and the realness of what was important. Like here we are, if only here they were, literally fighting for mankind's future. Nothing is more important than when you're fighting Nazis. It's hard to think of something much more important than that.
Yeah.
And yet they come back, and there is after many, conflicts like that, same thing after World War I, you have the crazy kind of, the 20s and 30s that are kind of crazy until the world kind of crash happens. And then along, and again, you have this 50s thing, which is just, I think there is a sense of proportion that generation all of a sudden gets, where it realizes those that made it through the last 5 years are lucky as anything. They are grateful that they've made it through. They are victorious, and there is a certain celebratory excitement, I think. And guys like Jack Benny or guys like Stan Freberg, who is a little bit younger than Jack, but in essence, that's that similar generation. Even guys that were working, through the war, like George Burns and stuff. There is a certain survivor thing and a wryness, I think, where they realize, ultimately we're just dicking around. This is just comedy. This is nothing. This is not important. And that provides them with a certain lightness, as opposed to a Richard Pryor, who is fighting his own war in terms of racial equality. He's coming on the heels of the 60s and 70s, where the African American experience is its own powder keg. Yeah. And to him, it matters. It's much more important, I think, to those guys that literally fought in the war and made it through. It wasn't as important, and it provided them a certain comfort to be like, hey, we're just having cocktails and just being silly. And I think we can connect with that and at least observe that and appreciate that sort of the ease with which they can do this stuff. I mean, the timing of Benny, the timing of all these guys is just impeccable. I mean, and they're such masters at what they do, and yet there's a certain ease, because I think maybe subconsciously they realize, hey, this is just jokes. This is easy. No one's going to die in a foxhole. We might die on stage, but we're not going to die in a foxhole.
It's in its own way, it's its own escapism, I guess, from that angle. I mean, it's just don't even think about the stuff. Just for the half hour that I'm on the air, we're just gonna talk. We're just gonna put you in a place that has nothing to do with any worries whatsoever, and you get to see us try to deal with our own self-made, weird, fun stuff just because we can.
Right, that kind of, yeah. And it's also, I mean, TV is a new medium. Radio has been established, so radio is kind of at its peak.
Oh, yeah.
But there's this, the possibilities of the future. We've defeated the Hun, and here's the Populux thing. And I always love those transitional times, because there's such interesting art and there's such interesting music, and there's some connection to these guys. I don't know if my parents weren't really fans. I didn't grow up with this kind of stuff, but as soon as I saw it or heard it, there was some kind of a connection where it was. I think in a weird way. I know I can be kind of judgmental in terms of appearance or a sartorial quality. So you've got these guys that are just dressed to the nines. They look classy. They look like they're from the 40s and 50s, because they literally are.
Yeah.
And yet they could be so silly. They could be so crazy and so funny. Okay. And that dichotomy to me is very appealing. The main appealing thing about Monty Python, which is a totally different sort of subject. But here are exceedingly smart guys that can do exceptionally silly things.
Oh, yeah.
Jack or Stan or the people that are working for them are at the top of their field. They can really do stuff really, really well, and yet they can just make complete fun of it, or sort of do whatever they want with it. They're masters of it, and that to me is just so appealing. It's easy to look silly. It's easy to look funny. It's easy to look weird. I think it's way harder to look straight-laced and then be funny, or then be silly, or then be crazy, or then be thought of as weird, and that to me is really appealing.
Yeah, I get that completely. So now therein comes up the second part of it all. The look, like you said, because they were from the late 30s through the early 50s, they looked the part. They dressed well. They looked classy. And these, especially in this particular case with Jack Benny's shows, and I don't know as much about Stan, so you can kind of help me out on this one in a minute. Mm-hmm. But with Jack's show, The guys, the show was produced. It was actually on the air twice. Once for the East Coast, once for the West Coast on a Sunday. Monday was a day off. Tuesday, the writers came in and they banged out for, I think it was like 2 or 3 days. Rehearse once. That was Jack's big thing. Rehearse once on Saturday. Sunday, you go in, you do the show. And it's just a bunch of people standing on a stage, dressed however they're dressed, usually classy, with their scripts in their hands, with a microphone in front of them, and a couple of guys who are doing all the sound effects in different spots, and that's it. And to me, those shows are like the epitome of acting, because you don't have a set, you don't have costuming, you don't have an outside when you don't have a car come in. It's all so much just close your eyes and everything is just projected into your head through your ears. And that is freaking amazing and outstanding to me. Wow, I can talk today. And it still works 50 years later.
It works because there is a certain openness and blank canvas that radio and only audio allows. So if Jack's writers want to write a sketch that takes place on the moon, they can do it, because they say, we're on the moon. What does that sound like? Okay, let's figure out some way to... It's always going to be cheaper to simulate the sound of an environment than it is to recreate that environment visually. So Stan has this great bit that he did about talking about how much better radio was from television. Again, to us that seems kind of anachronistic and crazy, but he would do this demonstration where he would have 50 B-1 bombers drop 60 megatons of whipped cream onto Las Vegas, and they would do that with sound, and you would have this big, big, and it was great. It's like we could never do this on television, and the thing is that the people that heard it 50 years ago could imagine it and make it look great in their brains, and we today can imagine it and make it look great in our brains, and we've made the adjustments. And so the acting possibility is just like you said, it's just wide open.
Okay, before you go any much further, was that an actual skit that they did?
Yeah. I think it's something like they drop. I think it's a metric ton of whipped cream onto Lake Tahoe from a dozen B-1 bombers or something. It's awesome.
And here's the best part of the whole thing. You and I are not doing any. Well, I mean, the only sound effect you did was
right.
And yet the visual image, I've already got it.
Yeah.
I've never heard this skit before, and like I said, the only sound effect is just blowing through your tongue and lips like that, and it's got. There's something about the comedy that I think sometimes that makes those visuals happen so much easier in our heads.
Sure.
because
it's sort of like when you look at the South Park movie. And, you have, in essence, I mean, it is computer generated, but in essence, these are paper cutouts that are
right.
sort of, so you have the Canadian Army coming over the wall, coming over the mountain, that are just these little block characters.
Right.
And in terms of serving the story, it does it. It's fine. It's kind of it's almost like visual radio. It's just that simple animated style that it doesn't have to look realistic. It doesn't have to be, it can just imply what the story is. So there are equivalent versions of that today. And that's why I think podcasting is so damn popular, or books on tape, books on tape, audiobooks are so popular, because you really do provide a portion of the entertainment. A large portion is you imagining the environment that things are happening, and that's what these radio shows. A lot of radio guys couldn't translate to TV because you had to understand it was a different thing. And you couldn't, some guys that were big on radio just didn't work on television. And some guys that weren't big on radio could, and Ernie Kovacs, for instance.
Yes. Who
adored the television medium and understood this was a new visual thing and took advantage of that. That's another genius. That you look at some of the stuff that he does, and it's just, we've all just been.
I'm sorry, that last part got cut off.
Oh, and anyone that does anything on TV on some level is just doing a pale imitation of Ernie Kovacs, from 50 years ago, from 60 years ago. They just put out a box set of Ernie Kovacs' shows. Amazing stuff. I mean,
Nice.
just his visual ideas, and using this new medium of television as a paint box, and not trying to make it be radio.
Yeah.
And understand that. It's really cool.
Yeah, very much so. Okay, last piece of this whole trifecta of it all, and then we'll wrap it up. You being a professional musician, you lucky dog, you. This is the one that kills me. Now, like I had said, for Jack's show, Monday was off. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they were writing the jokes, and simultaneously, they're trying to figure out who is going to be singing, who's going to be performing, what's the piece going to be, get the band in to practice, get the tenor in to practice, and holy crap, the tenors that they've had, Kenny Baker and God, I can't remember what the other guy's name was now. Amazing ranges on these guys.
Yeah.
But as a musician yourself, and speaking as the pro, the idea of being able to sit in, they called it an orchestra. I mean, technically it was, because most of the orchestral stuff that you would need, you got a couple of strings, but for the most part it's a band, really.
Right.
But you could come in week to week, come in for like 3 days, practice for 2 hours, sight read the thing down, make sure that you got it, and then sit on a Sunday, know that you have to perform your pieces, but at the same time have a front row seat to one of the top rated comedy acts in the country, and still have a paycheck at the end of of that night, consistently, week after week. There's nothing like that anymore. I mean, unless you start getting into like the Late Show with and the late night talk show circuit, really.
Yeah, that's it. And there's 4 of those basically. I mean, you have Letterman's band, Leno's band. You got the Roots that are with Fallon. You've got Kimmel's band, which is like all his high school buddies.
Yeah, which means that you're talking about a grand total of like 25 people tops right now.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas every show had its own band and stuff. Yeah, I mean those guys worked hard. That's actually a good question. I don't know how much they could enjoy the actual program, because those things were so tightly regimented in terms of having to have cues ready, and then having to have separation between areas. I mean, so I'm assuming they would enjoy a lot of the shows, but it's probably also quite a hectic kind of thing. I mean, I've done a number of nothing that consistently, but occasionally when you do programs like that. I mean, the closest I ever did, I played for Joan Rivers once, and we were on stage, and we had to play Anchors Away when she walked out. We got to watch the entire show, and then played Anchors Away when she walked off. And that was one of the greatest gigs I ever had, because it was just, I got this I mean, she was on fire. She was absolutely on fire. This is about 8 years ago or so. Great gig. But I've done gigs that have cues where you're waiting, where you're watching. I'm sure those guys earned their paychecks, and a lot of it is, it's like doing a play, where every week it's a new play, So I don't know how much they could just relax and enjoy the stuff. I'm sure it came across, but oh yeah, I would in a second I would do something like that. In an absolute second, I would sign up for something like that. I mean, it's again the sheer volume of work that these guys did, and how often, now when you watch Saturday Night Live, that's another example too. SNL, the SNL band, it's another great band.
You forgot about
and
that.
Great musicians, great players. But when you look at the credits at the end of SNL in terms of how many writers there are, these shows that Jack was doing, that Stan was doing, you maybe had 4 or 5 writers. You had a handful of guys. It was a very different kind of thing. Your Show of Shows is a great example too. The TV show, Your Show of Shows. I mean, that writers' room was 5 guys. Yes, it was Mel Brooks and it was Woody Allen. But I don't care who you are. I mean, put 4 people in a room and have them write 28 shows, 32 shows.
28 minutes a clip.
Yeah, I mean, your shows was 90 minutes every week, which is insane. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah.
No wonder these guys drank. No wonder these guys, got exhausted and ended up beating their wives or whatever. It's just like, got the pressure. My goodness.
Yeah. Plus, you've got all the interactions that all the characters are supposed to have, all the quirks that they're all supposed to have. Right. Where are you supposed to put in the product placement advertisement?
Commercials,
for
right.
And still have the commercial group happy with you, which was, I mean, we've talked about that. Jack didn't particularly care for Canada Dry when they said, well, we don't like the comedic stuff. Pfft, gone, bye. Got somebody else.
Wow, really?
Freberg, his first one, Canada Dry. They didn't like the comedic product placements. And Jack just said, really? Okay, bye. I'll get somebody else. And next week, he had somebody else. And you were saying, Stan, he did not want to do cigarettes. And just
didn't want to do cigarettes,
done.
And that screwed him ultimately because they only did 13. They couldn't find a sponsor. They couldn't find a full-time sponsor. So,
and that was wait a second. When that was the 50s at that point, right?
Yeah, 55, I think. 54, 55, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is way ahead of the curve. I mean, everybody was smoking then. For him to come out and say, "No, I'm not going to do that because you're killing people," that was quite a stance to take.
Yeah, you don't say something like that. That would be wrong. You can't say that about my product.
Right. You've upset the people at Chesterfield's.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, more along the lines of, why are you going ahead and pissing off all of us over here?
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, that would be wrong. I wouldn't do that joke. That would be wrong. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to piss you people off. I'm not being insulting. It's just that, they did do that to people. And like you said, as a musician, to have a consistent gig like that, damn, these guys had to have been sight reading stuff for okay, here's the pages, here's what we're doing. The ink's not dry on it yet, so don't touch it too much. And here we go. Yeah. We're going to practice.
Literally, and then to have someone actually write them out too. That's the other thing.
Yeah,
like we're so spoiled now that we can have stuff printed out and you can have all kinds of things and have it on your iPad and you're good to go.
Yeah. And they had to score it. They had to transcribe it out to everybody else. They had to practice it. And you don't even get started on just the conductor himself.
Sure.
Because I mean, until I took conducting in college, I didn't realize how crazy that is.
Yeah. And then have a guy, counting down with his fingers that you have, 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 4 seconds, whatever, Yeah, crazy pressure. I mean, if TV productions are still like that today, and there's still a certain level of that with radio. When you watch a well-tuned TV show, I went and saw the Daily Show a couple of years ago, and it was impressive. But that's one guy with a desk, in essence. No band, some correspondence, but to have a band and in-house singers and sketches and people, and it's crazy, very impressive, and then be funny. Not just work, not just hit your mark, but then be funny.
Read the crowd, react to the crowd, work with it. He's got a hell of a lot more. Jon Stewart's got a hell of a lot more leeway than Stan or Jack ever did because they had a script. You screwed up on the script, man. You how the hell you?
Yeah. And they were live on the air too.
Yes.
John's taping. I mean, again, not to take anything away from John because he's a genius. Those guys, anybody that does any of these shows, it's an incredible amount of work, and it's an incredible testament that even the worst shows look as good as they do. But these people were live, an hour on the radio, half hour on the radio every week. Crazy.
And yet they pulled it off.
Sure.
And they had fun. As much as it was work, it was very rare for me to listen to any of these and think, these guys are just phoning it in.
Yeah.
I mean, the only time I could ever feel that way for Jack's show was when Mary decided that she, for whatever reason, didn't want to be on the show anymore, and she recorded her lines ahead of time. And the early ones, you could tell it was literally just, I'm just reading the pieces. And later it got a lot better where it was really as if she were really there. But man.
Crazy.
And live, you're right. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
And now we look at stuff and we go, Saturday Night Live hasn't been funny since 78. Some people would go ahead and say. Some people would say, it's never been funny, but, whatever.
Yeah, there's moments. Yes. I do catch moments. I'm always gigging on Saturdays, but, YouTube the next day,
yes.
there are some moments.
And they work hard. They try. They got
Sure.
huge numbers of people working at it.
Yeah.
And like you said, for writers, who only knows how many music writers? And for Jack, it was five guys that he kept with for like damn near 20 years, and
Right.
he was the head editor. He wasn't a writer.
Right.
And it's amazing.
Yeah, it's a different thing. Look, it's an earlier time. There's more subjects to, there's few. How do I put this? There's fewer jokes to repeat. You know what I mean? Like, to come up with something interesting now, 50 years down the road. I mean, a lot of it is very similar, but you have a new medium of TV or a new medium of some kind of a radio thing or whatever. There are. You understand why people do what they do in every era, and there's good things and there's bad things about every one of them. So, but yeah, it's fascinating stuff. The real pros.
Absolutely. And we owe them, some good nods every once in a while, because
Sure.
they laid out so much good stuff for us.
Sure, definitely.
All right. I think that's going to be more than enough to cover for now. In sometime in the future, I hope I'll be able to get you for a couple of other things. One of the items that had bubbled up in my head, had you ever dealt with the MIDI revolution when it started?
Yeah, just on the periphery, because when it came in, I was much more still focused on drumming, and I wasn't as much of a keyed instrumentalist yet in terms of guitar or piano or whatever. So, but no, I remember seeing the early ads for it, and talking about what does this mean and how does this work, and
yeah. There was that I was thinking about getting you for, and
Sure.
Of course, sometime in the future, we should really have a chance to discuss this song itself when I was your age, because there is so much fun in that one. I mean, this is like a nice, laid-back, much more personalized version of the whole "we didn't start the fire," because this is it does not stretch 50 years. This stretches 25, 30 tops, and this definitely lays out into us. And maybe sometime in the future, when you've got time and we've got a lag and I don't have any other content, I'll have you come back and we'll discuss through that, because
Sounds good.
It would be wonderful. Meantime, I got to get you out of here because you've got your own damn show to do. Plus, let's face it, your morning's just started now.
That's right. Exactly.
So let's
Perfect.
get him on out of here. George, thank you very much, and of course for your generosity and your time and your music. Those
My
of you that are
pleasure.
looking to find George's stuff, you can find George on his website at...
Go to geologicpodcast.com, check out the show, or you can just go to georgehrab.com. That's HRAB, and that'll hook you up with all the stuff that we do over here.
Please don't pronounce it Hrab. Please don't do that. Just
whatever.
I keep hearing people don't do that.
I don't know. That's
You
fine,
can also
thanks.
find his stuff over on cdbaby.com and lulu.com. He is a wonderful, wonderful person, very prolific with his podcasts. I think I'm up to, maybe 3 or 4 at this point for me. I don't know what it is. And he's, of course, been very, very helpful for a lot of people. You'll see him over at Dragon Con, I think. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He's been to TAM. He will be
Nexus.
at next. I looked at the prices. I can't get there. I'm sorry, but one day. But in the meantime, let's get you on out of here, George. Thank you. If misinformation is over there, please send my wishes her way. And folks over here are sending waves, and thank you very much. Until next time.
Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.
Good night, Matt. And, of course, until next time, everyone, if you have suggestions on stuff that you would like us to cover, please, again, email me, shootingtribble@gmail.com, and we'll be looking forward to getting that information. And as always, until the next time we talk, I wish you the peace I no longer have. I wish you the strength that I've learned. Man, I got to get the closer instead of the opener this time. I wish you all well. Until the next time, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon. Good night.
You know what's true before you can say boo. You'll be my age too.